Welcome to the Essential Ingredient in Paran Cooking at Home series, and I'd like to invite you into my home for the Say Cheesy Cheese Festival that's happening at Paran Market. So today what we're going to do is a double baked cheese souffle. So first of all, we're going to start with making just a simple bechamel. So we're going to pop 50 grams of butter into there and let that melt. And we're going to put in 50 grams of flour and then 500 mils of milk, and it's got nutmeg and bay leaves in it. So you can preheat this in the microwave or just in a small pot, because it does make it easier to make a bechamel when milk is warm. Make sure your oven is preheated at 170 degrees. I'm just going to add my flour. And we're just going to allow that to cook out for a few minutes. Okay, so while that's cooking out, I'll also show you I have 150 grams of goat's cheese, a couple of tablespoons of chopped fresh thyme, 6 egg yolks, 6 egg whites, and 200 grams of grated Gruyere. Okay, so we're just cooking that out. We want to cook the flour out so it doesn't taste gritty and floury. So now I'm going to add my milk. Add it all at once, and then we're just going to let that thicken. You can leave the bay leaves in there while it's cooking, just to get that flavour through the bechamel. So this will take a few minutes just to thicken up. So once it starts bubbling, it won't thicken any more than that once it comes to the boil. So you can turn it down, just let it cook for a little bit longer. Just keep it moving because you don't want to burn the bottom of the pan, otherwise you'll end up with burnt tasting bechamel, which is not very nice. Okay, so this is what it should look like, the consistency. So I'm just going to take out these bay leaves. I'm going to transfer this to a large bowl. So any sort of stainless steel bowl, ceramic bowl. So we're just going to let this cool just for a little bit, for a few minutes. We don't want to add the egg yolks straight away or the cheese, otherwise they'll just all melt and the egg yolks will start cooking before we need them to. I am going to add my thyme though, because you want those flavours to infuse through the bechamel. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to cool for a few minutes, I've got my 6 egg whites here, and I'm just going to whisk them by hand. I've got a fairly large whisk here because I want to try and get as much aeration into the egg whites as possible. You can use an electric beater by all means, but just be careful not to over whip your egg whites. Okay, now you can see the egg white is at quite a soft peak. So I'm just going to put that to the side for a minute. And we'll come back to our bechamel. So we're going to add our 6 egg yolks. So we'll just mix those through. And then we're going to add our grated Gruyere Gruyere cheese. I am going to add quite a bit of ground black pepper. Now, you will need to check the seasoning because you've got Gruyere and goat's cheese in there. You'll probably find that you won't need a lot of salt. So just be really mindful of that. So I'm just going to add a small amount of salt. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my goat's cheese, but you want to keep it in chunks. So as you drop it in, you want to have a few little bits of chunky pieces of goat's cheese, so that when you're eating your souffle, you've got some different textures through it, which is really quite lovely. So, pour that in. Okay, so you just want to fold that through really carefully because you don't want to break up all the goat's cheese. Okay, so now we're going to add our egg whites. So, a nice little oof. We're going to add this in 3 parts. So, add the first little bit. And just give it a quick stir. Next bit. So you're just trying to fold it through. You don't want to stir it too much. You want to fold it through because you don't want to break down all those little lovely air bubbles that we've created. Okay, the last bit of egg white. Okay, so this is probably the hardest part of the exercise. So, and the great thing about this recipe, it really is foolproof. So, now what we do is, there's a couple of ways of doing this which I'll show you. Okay, so I have some little plastic ramekins which are really great if you want to pre-do these. And then you can either store them in the fridge for up to probably 4 or 5 days, or you can freeze them for any time. So making this amount in bulk is a really good idea because then you can put them away and that time-consuming part of it is done for you. So these little plastic moulds have got some little lids on them. So once your souffle is cooked and it's cooled, you can actually pop a lid on it and then just stick it straight in the freezer. Or if you're going to use it straight away, then the ramekins are the perfect idea. Now I've just greased them with a little bit of butter and just going to take a ladle. We're going to ladle into the moulds. You want to fill them not all the way to the top because we need a little bit of room for them to rise. But they will sink back down again once they've cooled. And don't forget, we are going to cook them again. So we don't want them too small. So the last one. So as you can see, this recipe, you get quite a few out of it. You don't want to try and make it too small, the amount, otherwise it just won't work properly. You do need to have a certain amount to make the recipe work really well. Okay, So now we're going to pop these in a water bath. So just with the plastic ones, just make sure your plastic's not touching. Otherwise you'll find it'll melt together, fuse together in the oven. So just some water in here. You don't want to fill it up too much because once these cook, they become really light. And these start to rise because obviously the weight's been lifted out of them, and then they'll start bobbing around in the water and tipping over, which you don't want. It's not so bad for the ramekins because they've got a little bit of weight to them. But you don't really need to fill it all the way up to the side. Okay. Now I'm going to pop these in the oven for 25 minutes at 170 degrees. Okay. There we go. As you can see, they have risen beautifully. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let them sit for 5 to 10 minutes before we turn them out. Okay, so these have been resting now for about 10 minutes. I'm going to take one out and we're just going to gently pop it into our dish. This is the dish you'll be serving it in. We pour some cream. So I have turned my oven up now to 200 degrees to finish these off. These will only take about 5 minutes because they're still warm. If you've been taking it out of the freezer from the night before and they're cold, you will need them in the fridge for about, in the oven for at least 15 minutes from cold. So I'm just grating a generous amount of Gruyere onto the top. And I'm also going to pop, just for purely decorative and a little bit of infusion, a little bit of thyme and a couple of little bay leaves just in the side there. Now that will go into the oven for 5 minutes. So here we have our beautiful double-baked goat's cheese and Gruyere souffle. I'm just going to top it with a little bit of dukkha. And a few little spiced figs on the side. And this is just perfect on its own for breakfast, brunch, even with a little green salad on the side for lunch, and a glass of rosé, and just some crispy flatbread on the side. There we have it, double baked cheese souffle.